Welcome to Sensitive Changemakers, the podcast where we celebrate the power of sensitivity and introversion in leadership, entrepreneurship, and beyond. I'm Kate Carter, your host, a certified professional coach, a fellow HSP and introvert who is passionate about helping you embrace your unique gifts and lead with authenticity. Welcome to this week's episode. Today, I want to dig into the topic of selling as an introvert and selling as a highly sensitive. This has been quite the journey for me since I started with the idea of business around about 2017, 2018. And as I have said in previous episodes, I didn't start making money until 2020. And my business has gradually grown since then, every year. And one of the things I've had to navigate is how to show up, how to sell in my way as an introvert, as a highly sensitive. So I'm going to talk you through exactly what I do and the decisions I've made over the last 5+ years and the reasons why. Now, some of this may not apply to you because you may have a very different business, and that is absolutely fine. So as you're listening to this, take what you need and leave what you don't need. So the first thing I'm really going to caveat this conversation by saying is that there is always a mindset energy aspect to this. And so I did it the other way around. I did the bro marketing techniques to start off with, or at least I tried to give it a go. I wasn't very successful doing it that way because something very deep inside me was just very stubborn and said, no, you don't want to do things like this. So for example, very early on, I was told to get on sales calls, and I didn't like them. I didn't like sales calls. I felt like I had to perform. I felt like I had to persuade and convince, and I ended up pulling back from it, and I absolutely despised it. Now, there is a mindset part to this, and there was a strategy part to this. The mindset part of it was actually there was an edge that I needed to lean into. There absolutely was. I needed to understand that as a business, I did need to sell. But the important distinction here was I could do that my way. I didn't have to do it in the way that other people were doing it, even if they found that way successful. The other part to this was finding my balanced way and understanding that energy had a lot to do with it. And what I mean by this is, again, I thought I had to do everything, be all of the places, show up all of the time, push, 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 be louder, be not more in your face, but be more extroverted in my energy than I actually was. And like I said, I did it the other way around. So I did all the bro marketing stuff to start off with, and then actually took a step back and thought, this doesn't feel like it's right for me, and I can't sustain this. This is not sustainable for me. I'm going to hate doing this. I'm going to resent my business, and I'm going to burn myself out. So there's got to be a different way for me to do this. And so it has been about navigating my energy. So actually understanding how my energy flows. I know for me, this has been something that I've had to really accept about myself. And it's not been easy because I was brought up as a doer. You know, we just do. We just get on with it. We put our head down and we just do the job. We get it done. And so admitting to myself that actually there are times when I find that really difficult. And there are times when I need to be rather than do was a difficult thing for me to conceptualize and then act on. And so that was actually a big journey that has taken me a number of years because there was a lot of push and pull. There was a lot of, no, I can just push through this, and then complete and utter burnout on the other side where I was forced to take a break. And so the energy part of this was understanding what my cycle is like. When do I have high energy days? When do I have low energy days? How can I build my business around that? How can I normalize taking a rest and break? And normalize taking things a bit slower, maybe on a couple of days, actually enjoying complete rest. And by this, I mean not reading, not writing, not doing anything in the back of the business, because that's exactly what I thought a slow day was, but actually complete rest. Like, I will now take myself off, even if it's for 15, 20 minutes, and just lie on my bed and close my eyes. And I don't necessarily go to sleep or nap because I find that difficult to do in the day, but I will just rest and not force myself to do anything. So understanding that piece was really important in terms of selling. I know that sounds bizarre, but it was. And then, like I said, that mindset piece. What are the edges that I need to lean into? And what are the things that are completely out of alignment? And it was discerning the two different pieces there, which is different for everybody. For me, it was discerning what is out of alignment and just not something I want to do. And actually, what is something that I need to lean into that may feel a bit uncomfortable, but is actually something that's going to support me and help me and it's doable. And so really understanding that. And I'm going to talk through, as we go through this, how I kind of balanced those two pieces. So here we go. I'm going to talk through this as my funnel, if you like, how it's evolved and what I've learned on my journey on the way. And as I said, take what you need, leave what you don't. So the first thing that I've learned over the last 5+ years is that in order for me to sell and show up, I needed some support so that it wasn't all on me and a call. And what I mean by that is what I was talking about earlier when I was saying about the sales call. I hated that because there was so much pressure. I felt like I had to perform and put on this big personality, and it just wasn't me. So I needed something to support me. And what I found that is so supportive is content. And I don't mean that to say that it's the magic formula or the perfect fix, but it supported me because when people do have a point of contact with me, whether that be when they download something, when they have a free call with me, when they got on a discovery call with me, they already know so much about me because for the majority of people, unless it's a referral, for the majority of people, they've been consuming my content. And my content has evolved over the last 4 or 5 years to be representative of who I am as a person, who I am as a business, and what I stand for. So that's been very strategic and purposeful that I've put that into my content. What are my values? What are my priorities? How do I work? What makes me different? All of those different things are very clear in my content. So when somebody gets in touch with me, when we have a conversation, whatever that conversation is, there's already a lot of understanding on their part on who I am and how I can help. And that has made it easier for me to sell because that takes some of that heavy lifting away. Now, I'm going to be doing a masterclass next week in the Facebook group, The Sensitive and Introverted Entrepreneur. And if you want to join us, please do. I'll put the link in the show notes. We're going to be breaking down the different types of content. And I'm not going to say too much in this particular episode other than even the content that doesn't have a call to action that is direct to a free or a call or a course or a program, even the content that has a question at the end or maybe an invitation for like food for thought, that type of thing. Yes, they're not necessarily going to be pieces of content that instantly convert, which is fine, but they are pieces of content that are evergreen, that don't have a timeline, that are open over years and years. And that has actually served me incredibly well in terms of supporting my selling and in supporting my sales process. So don't knock that type of content. I know you'll hear it on the online space that type of content doesn't go anywhere, but I think there is a need for balance in everything, especially if you're an introvert and highly sensitive. And a lot of highly sensitives and introverts write that kind of content incredibly well because they can be themselves, because they can just invite people to think or to ask themselves a question or to reach out and say what they think. So that was the first piece, that piece of content. And next week in the Facebook group, like I said, I will be breaking that down even further. But that has been such a big part of my sales process, is having the content do the heavy lifting for me. And when I first started out, my funnel was as simple as content, free call, follow up. That was it. That was my funnel. It was incredibly organic. It did have a little bit of automation because when you sign up for a free call, that goes through an app called Satori, which I love. And Satori allows me to put a questionnaire on there. It gives them the Zoom link. It also asks for a testimonial at the end. So in terms of automation, that was the kind of only automation in that original funnel. But it served me really well because I'd have content and that would lead to a free call. The free call would then lead to a testimonial at the very least, and then follow up if needs be. And I'm going to talk through that particular funnel to start off with, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about how it's evolved over time. So in my original funnel, very simple funnel, it worked. I'm not saying I haven't tweaked it as things have changed in the online space, and also how I've kind of grown because I can't offer as many free calls as I used to. But I'm going to talk through that original funnel. So the first part was the content. The second part was giving that free value. Now, the caveat here is that the lesson that I wish I'd known sooner was that I had to love whatever I was giving away for free. Otherwise, I'd start resenting it. So it had to be something that was complementary to my energy cycles. It had to be something that I loved. And it had to be something that was sustainable. And I didn't necessarily learn that lesson straight away. So I may have pushed myself a little bit hard and done the do rather than the take a step back and look at this. So that's, first of all, just have a think about that. If you're thinking, I'm not saying that everybody has to do something free. Okay, this was something I loved to do and I still love to do it where I can, but it isn't for everyone. So please don't hear that this has to be you. But I did love giving away free value, and I still do. And that allowed me to show up as me, because one of the decisions that I made pretty early on, because I didn't like the sales call or the typical bro marketing sales call, is I made the decision quite early on. I'm quite proud of myself for this. I think it was that inner stubbornness of me. But I didn't want to have in inverted commas here, a free session that turned into a sales call. I didn't want a sales call in disguise. I wanted to actually get to know people and support them where they were at. So my free calls were that they were free sessions, and my intention was to not sell on those calls. My intention was, as for most of the people that I was getting to know, it was that first point after my content. So it was a very safe space. It was a space where whoever was coming to that call felt that they could share things with me. We could have a very deep conversation about where they were, what they needed, how to move forward, whether that be mindset, energy, strategy. And that worked incredibly, incredibly well. Then what happened is at the end of those sessions, 99% of the time, the person that I was working with or was having the session with would ask how they could work with me. That was lovely in a way, because that was completely them. That wasn't something I had brought to the conversation. It wasn't something I was intending. But it was nice that they brought that they felt that connection, that they could ask those questions. And the way that I originally did this was, I was so nervous back in 2020, 2019, 2020, that sort of time, really, really early on. I was so scared of talking about pricing face to face with somebody. I had so many people pleasing tendencies and so much fear around rejection and all of the things that can come up, self-doubt, etc., that I pulled away most of the time. I'd say probably 60 to 70% of the time I pulled away from talking about pricing on a call at all. And the way that I would round those sessions up, it would be, I'll send you an email and we can talk through what it would look like. And emailing felt a lot safer for me at that time to talk through the next steps. And I'm not saying that's the right way to do it, but that's how I did it to start off with, and it worked. I signed clients. And I'm going to talk now just how I've adapted that, because I still have something like that in place. I may have more discovery calls now than I do free sessions, and I'll talk about the the difference between those two in a minute. But what I tend to do now is if they bring that question up at the end, and a free session is still a free session, but if they do bring that question up at the end, I do talk it through. I'm no longer scared of talking about pricing and how they can work with me, etc., because that feels very grounded for me now. But it's been a journey to get there. So I still, even now, I will have that conversation with them on the call, and I'll break that down a bit as well. And then after, I will always say, go and have a way and think about it. Go away and think about it. I'll send you an email with everything, and then we can go from there. And I still follow up every single call with an email about what we spoke about, how I see us working together, the next steps if they want to, and then we go from there. And the follow-up was also really, really important. So even if they said no at that moment, I would still say, that's absolutely fine. Are you okay if I check up in, 2 to 3 months, see how you're getting on? And that is, again, that follow-up is so, so important. So that's kind of how I did things back then. And that follow-up part of it was part of my funnel, because that's how, for the majority of people, I sign the clients. Now, going back to the free session versus discovery call, what happens now is if my calendar allows, I still do have free slots for a free session. And that is just the same as it always was. It's still a free session. What happened a couple of years back was that I had some people getting on that call saying, when are you going to pitch to me? Because I just want to say yes. And which was lovely, absolutely fantastic to kind of get that conversation and to have that said to me and brought to the session. But what it made me realize is I need something here that's just for those people who are already sold, who don't necessarily need the free session because they already know enough about me, how I work, what I do, etc. They just want to get on and have that right fit conversation. So that's when the discovery call came in. Some people call it consultation, but the discovery call came in. And the way that I sold on those, because this conversation was much more about how can we work together? Is this a good fit? Is this going to work? So I have some questions, and even in the discovery call, it was never, and still is, never about me pushing any kind of agenda on the person, because again, that just felt ick. It is about listening, about actively listening to the person in front of me and really getting to know them well, because I've got like a mini checklist in my head. I know how I coach people best. I know the types of people I coach. I know the values and the priorities that that people bring to a conversation that I can support them with. So I ask the questions, how do you like to be coached? And it's amazing how many people always say, I've never been asked that question before. And I think it's such an important one, because I know as a coach that my approach to coaching and mentoring is I gently push you into the edges that you need to lean into. I am not in your face, this is what you've got to do, this is how you're going to do it. That is not me. I am a coach first and foremost and a mentor second. So the way that I approach these is asking questions, drawing out the information, mirroring back what I've heard to the client, and then saying, sounds like there's an edge to lean into here. What do you think about X? And that's how I coach. So if somebody comes onto a discovery call and says, right, I like it to be really direct and just tell me how it is, that's not necessarily my best way of coaching. So that's one of my internal checklists. The next one is just asking questions like, what have you tried already? If I could wave a magic wand, what would you like your business to look like? And that just gives me an idea of their kind of mindset and how they feel about what they've already tried and what they're prepared to kind of lean into. And that's really important, because in my internal checklist, I need somebody who is, or I work best with somebody who's quite open-minded and prepared to take that mental step back and look at things and slow down. I spend quite a lot of time with my clients slowing down and zooming out and looking at the whole picture rather than getting caught up in just one thing. So that's one of my internal checklists. And then what is most important to you in your business? What do you want to stand for? What do you want your business to stand for? Just really gives me an idea of values. And again, it's always good to, I mean, our values don't have to line up, but it's always a good idea if some of them, there's a crossover between some of them, just so that I know exactly then how I can support them and what's important to them. So those are the kind of questions that I ask. There's a lot of listening and there's a lot of internal kind of dialogue for me, just checking through that. And then at the end, once we've had that conversation and we talk about where they're at and where they've been and where they would like to go, if I feel like, yes, this person is ticking all of my internal checkboxes, then I can say to them, I would love to work with you. And I think that's such a lovely thing to be able to say. Like, I would love to work with you. I can see us working on X, Y, and Z. How does that sound? And we can have that kind of conversation. On the flip side of things, if they don't align, if it doesn't sort of click all those checklists, and it doesn't need to tick all of them, but 90% of them, if that doesn't happen, then I know enough amazing coaches and service providers out there who I can signpost those people to and say, I don't think, this has been a wonderful conversation. I don't necessarily think I'm the best person, but I do know who might be. And that's been lovely. And the mindset piece here, there's a couple of mindset pieces. The first one is to be able to go into that conversation knowing that you are listening, that you are not trying to push them into any kind of decision, that you are there to listen. And I always think when I'm going into these, the best thing that can happen in this conversation is the person I'm talking to knows what their next steps are. And if those next steps aren't with me, that's okay. So it's really having that neutrality, that neutral perspective, wanting, to work with a client, but absolutely being prepared for that not happening and being okay with that. So the neutral kind of going in. And then the other side of this is one of the mindset shifts that really supported me here was thinking less about selling and more about being in service. And this has supported me so much in actually talking more about pricing and talking about how I can see us working together and things like that, because it's not about me. Selling felt like it was me, like it was all on me. I had to perform, I had to go out there and convince people and persuade people. Whereas being in service is about them. It's about how can I help you to understand your next steps and also to get the support that you need to move forward. And so that felt really, really important. So I wasn't convincing anybody, listening, active listening, and then being in service. And that felt so much better. So that's kind of how the calls have evolved over time. It's gone from the kind of more free session with possibly some questions at the end, with very much me pulling back and just talking through email. It's amazing that I did sign clients that way, if I'm looking at it completely honestly, into more of there's a free session if people feel they need that, but there's also a free discovery call where we can go straight to what it would look like together and really having that in-service perspective. So as I've evolved and grown, and as social media has evolved and grown, I would argue that free sessions have been painted with this brush that they are sales calls in disguise. And a couple of things happened. One, I saw that shift, that people were less likely to want to get on a free session. They still did, still had people getting on, but they were less likely. And my calendar was booking up and I had less space. So I decided to create lead magnets. That was the next thing I did. So I've got one on how do you know you're being highly sensitive. I've got another one on energy management. And those now become part of my funnel. So my content leads either to a free download of some description, which again, I can create on a high energy day and then just automate it, which is great for my introverted side of things. Or my content leads into a free masterclass, which I love doing. As an introvert, it sounds very bizarre that I love video and I love doing masterclasses, but it works for me. I think it's being a teacher for so long and just having that kind of, I like seeing people's faces, and I like having, even if it's not their face, and we're not on a Zoom call, but we're in a Facebook group and I can hear the comments or see the comments, that feedback is lovely, and I love doing that. So I now have that into a masterclass, and then both of those things, so either the masterclass or the lead magnet, they lead into maybe an intensive that leads into one-to-one. I'm playing around with the idea of the quiet authority at the moment. So the quiet authority method is something I've got on the back burner. I am getting some beta testers at the moment. And I think, if I'm complete transparency here, I think it's going to be a low ticket program that people will get one session with me at the start, and then they can kind of work through it on their own. It's all going to be around about marketing and content, but I'll keep you posted on that one. But that may come into my funnel at some point, but at the moment it's in the trial and error stage, which, if you are human design, I'm a 1-3, and that trial and error side of me, I didn't realize how important that was to me. So I definitely need to try things out to see how they land with me, to see how it feels, get some feedback, etc. So that's how I'm at that stage at the moment. So that is basically how my funnel works at the moment. The important bit that I think not a lot of people talk about is that follow-up. And I would argue that emails is a great introvert friendly way of following up and selling. Even if you don't want to call it selling and you want to put it in service, like I did start off with as I was kind of normalizing this process, I think it's a wonderful way to have conversations with people and to be able to follow up and check in with them. I'm going to let you have a think of the question here that I'm going to ask you, which is, what if your next client is already watching and just waiting for the invitation? And what would that invitation be? What would that look like? And I would love to hear what comes up for you. Please do reach out and let me know. I do receive all of the emails personally, and I always personally reply. So I love hearing from you. And yeah, if you liked this episode, please do share it. And I look forward to speaking to you again. Take care. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. If you have any takeaways or any questions, please do reach out to me either through Instagram, LinkedIn or Facebook at Kate Carter Coaching, or you can email me at kate@katecarter.co.uk. I always love to hear your feedback and the things that you have taken from the podcast. If you know of any other highly sensitive people, then please do share this so that I can reach more and support more highly sensitive people to embrace their strengths and gifts. As a thank you, I will pick a winner every month for a free 50-minute coaching session with me. Thank you so much.